you hear good things.
She moved in with a suitcase, a single scuffed roller bag that zipped with a stutter. It was the kind of bag you carry when you're not just leaving somewhere, you're escaping it. Kathy Loreno was 36 and unraveling. Her job was gone. Her anxiety was rising. Her family didn't know what to do with her anymore, and neither did she. She didn't need a handout, just a place to land. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Michelle Knotek said, "Come stay with us." Her voice was soft. Her house looked warm. There were kids playing, dinner on the stove. She called Kathy sweetie, told her God must have brought you here. Hugged her too long and said, "You'll see, we're family now." And Kathy believed her. She didn't know Michelle used words like rope, that everything kind of started out tight, then tighter, then it cut. Within weeks, Kathy was sleeping on the floor. Not on a mattress, a basement corner. No pillow, one thin sheet, no heat. She was made to wear diapers for hygiene, denied showers, slapped for using the wrong tone, starving. She tried to leave once. Michelle grabbed her by the wrist and said, "Don't you dare. You walk out of here, you walk out on God's will." That was the last time Kathy tried. The last time anyone saw her above ground. Michelle said she ran off with a trucker, that she was troubled, that she didn't want help. But the fire pit in the backyard told a different story. The bones, the ash, the silence. Because in Michelle's house, people didn't leave. They vanished. I'm Sidney Smith, and this is Murderous Podcast. And this week's murderess is Michelle Knotek. In episode 85, The House That Hurt People. Before Michelle Knotek became a woman who made people vanish, she was Michelle Watson, a girl who learned young how to vanish herself. She was born in 1954 in the fog-soaked corners of Raymond, Washington, a working-class town pinned between the trees and the sea. Paper mills, pickup trucks, men who worked with their hands, and women who kept their feelings folded tight in the laundry basket. Her parents, Les and Leona, were oil and water. Les was absent more than present, drifting between jobs and bars until one day, he just didn't come home at all. Michelle was still in grade school when he vanished, and no one in the house ever really talked about it. Her mother, Leona, simply tightened the reins. She ran the house like a drill sergeant. Meals at 5 p.m. sharp. Beds made tight enough to bounce a quarter. No talking back, no slouching, no weakness. Leona had 4 kids to raise on her own, and Michelle was the oldest. But Michelle wasn't just the oldest, she was the most needy, the most hungry, the most manipulative. She craved attention like oxygen. If she didn't get it, she made it. She'd fake injuries, tell wild lies, say a teacher hit her just to watch her mother storm the school. Her younger siblings would later say, you couldn't trust anything she said. She'd cry in one breath, and laugh in the next. By the time Michelle was a teenager, she had figured out something important. If you tell a story confidently enough, people will believe it, even if it's not true. Especially if it's not true. Michelle bounced through high school without ever really finishing it. Ran away from home more than once, landed in a group home, spent some time in foster care. Each time, she'd show up wide-eyed and sweet. She could make adults believe she was a victim of cruelty, even when she was the one dealing it. In her late teens, she got married, had a daughter, Nikki. She got divorced, then married again, divorced again. She cycled through relationships like people cycle through seasons, always starting with charm, always ending in disaster. But it wasn't until 1987 that Michelle met her match. Not someone to challenge her, someone to follow her. He was quiet, reserved. Grew up in a family that didn't talk about feelings, didn't question rules. The kind of man who was raised to believe a good husband keeps his head down, provides, and doesn't stir the pot. Michelle didn't see a partner when she met David. She saw a tool. She moved fast, told him he was special, that no man had ever treated her right, that God must have brought them together. She begged for him, flattered him, asked for help in small ways that made him feel strong. Then she tested him. She'd scream at him for no reason, insult his driving, pick fights and watch his face. And when he didn't fight back, she knew this was someone she could shape. Someone who wouldn't say no. Someone who would obey. They got married, bought a white farmhouse, had 2 more daughters. Michelle finally had what she'd wanted all along. Not a family, a stage. And she was ready to direct the performance. Kathy Loreno arrived with a suitcase and left with nothing. Not a whisper, not a footprint, not even a grave. But the house remembers. At first, Kathy thought it was a gift. She'd lost her job, was estranged from her own family, and hadn't been eating much. Her body was exhausted. Her mind was worse. So when Michelle Knotek opened her door and said, "You stay here as long as you need. We're family," Kathy believed her. For the first few days, it was warm. Michelle gave her food, told her to rest, said she had a good spirit, hugged her, smiled at her. But Michelle's kindness came on a timer. One night, Kathy didn't dry the dishes right. Michelle scolded her, loud, sharp, and out of nowhere. You want a freeload? You better earn your keep. Kathy laughed nervously. But the next morning, she woke up to find her laundry had been dumped on the floor. The bed sheets were gone. The door to her room was open, but felt like it wasn't hers anymore. That week, the chores started. Scrubbing floors, hand washing laundry outside, picking weeds by hand. She cooked every meal. But by the third week, she wasn't allowed to eat with the family. Michelle told her she needed discipline, that she was too lazy to be a real woman. She began forcing Kathy to eat leftovers on a plastic lid on the floor like a dog. And always after everyone else had eaten. By then, the food was cold, sometimes half rotted. Kathy once asked if she could have something fresh. Michelle replied, "You should be grateful. God gives to those who don't complain." The girls, Nikki and Sammy, saw it all. They were told not to speak to Kathy unless Michelle gave permission. They watched her become smaller in every sense. She hunched her shoulders. She stopped brushing her hair. Her voice got quieter every day. One night, Nikki saw her sitting alone on the basement steps, holding a pillow over her chest like it might protect her. She asked, "Are you okay?" Kathy just nodded, didn't say a word. Kathy's days became routine, a punishing cycle: clean, serve, apologize. Michelle would invent reasons to be angry. She left her hair in the sink. She looked at David too long. She didn't fold the towels right. Each time, the punishment escalated. Sometimes Michelle would slap her. Other times, she'd make David do it. David never asked questions. He'd just grit his teeth and follow instructions. Once he made Kathy stand in the backyard in the rain, barefoot, for 3 hours because Michelle said he had lied about using too much dish soap. That same week, Michelle made Kathy wear an adult diaper as punishment for being disgusting. She wasn't allowed to shower for days. When she smelled, Michelle held her nose and told the girls, "Don't be like her. God turns his back on people like that." The house began to change. Not physically, but emotionally. Excuse me. Excuse me, folks. The air felt heavier. The rooms felt watched. Even the pets seemed quiet. There were no more hugs, no more warm voices, just silence. The sound of Kathy trying to cry without making noise. Nikki would say later, it was like she stopped being a person in front of us. Like my mom was peeling her soul off her body one layer at a time. What of a hell of a way to describe what she was witnessing. But Michelle wasn't done. One day, Kathy asked if she could call her brother, just to let him know she was okay. Michelle said no. You lost that right when you stopped being useful. That was the last time Kathy asked for anything. She disappeared 2 weeks later. And Michelle, she smiled and said, she ran off. You know how dramatic she is. But the basement still smelled like fear. And in that house, the silence didn't mean peace. It meant obedience. After Kathy disappeared, the house changed. Not physically, not all at once, but something shifted. The silence heavier. The windows always seemed closed. The girls started whispering more. Even the pets moved slower, quieter, like they knew something unspoken was living in the walls now. Michelle told her daughters, don't worry about Kathy. She left. She was never grateful. People like that don't last here. Then she sat them down at the kitchen table and read them a Bible verse about disobedience. No one mentioned Kathy again. But the house wasn't empty for long. Enter Ronald Woodworth. He was a middle-aged man, quiet, a little awkward. He walked with a limp, had no close family, and was struggling to live on his own. Michelle, excuse me again. Michelle told the neighbors she was taking him in out of kindness. Told David he was a project. Told the girls he was damaged, but not beyond saving. Ronald moved in with a bag of clothes and a carton of cigarettes. By the end of his first week, he was sleeping on a rubber mat in the laundry room. Michelle started with small corrections. Don't talk so much. Don't wear cologne. Wash your feet before coming inside. Then the rules changed. He had to ask for food. Had to dig ditches in a yard for drainage. Had to apologize out loud if he spoke out of turn. David would take him outside, quietly, and make him stand barefoot in the gravel for hours. Michelle watched from the porch with a coffee mug in her hand. He needs to toughen up, she said. Pain builds character. One day, Ronald burned himself on the stove. The skin on his palm blistered instantly. Michelle told him it was his fault. Said God was punishing him for being careless. Then she made him keep cooking. Neighbors began to notice. Finally, one said he looked like he'd been in a car accident, except it happened slowly. Bruises, open wounds, shuffling gait. bandages on both hands. When someone finally asked Michelle about it, she laughed and said, "He's dramatic. He once claimed bleach burned him." I said, "Then stop drinking it." That part was real. She made Ronald drink bleach, told him it would purify his stomach. When he vomited, she beat him for wasting food. Ronald was slowly dying, and the house didn't hide it. It absorbed it. Around this time, Shane Watson moved in, Michelle's 19-year-old nephew. Quiet, polite, trying to get his life on track. Michelle told him she could help, that the house was a place to start over, that God had brought him there for a reason. And at first, Shane believed her. But it didn't take long for him to see the cracks. He saw Ronald limping through the hallway at night, holding his side. He heard David yelling, loud, sharp, rehearsed. He noticed that the girls never smiled anymore. And he noticed Michelle, how she could go from cooing to cutting in a single sentence. She'd say, "You're like a son to me. Don't ever lie to me. I'll know if you do. And if you do, I'll destroy you." Shane started writing in a notebook, journaling what he saw, what he heard. He told Nikki, "Something's wrong here. This isn't just messed up. This is evil." Michelle found the notebook. She never said a word about it. But from that day forward, Shane stopped being the nephew. He became the threat. Michelle stopped smiling at him. David got colder. The house got quieter. Ronald was too weak to walk without a wall to lean on. Shane started keeping his bedroom door locked, though he knew it wouldn't save him. The girls knew it too. Nikki would later say, "We all knew it was only a matter of time. The only question was, who was next?" And Michelle, she went on pretending nothing was wrong, laughing in the kitchen, tending the garden, humming gospel songs while Ronald bled quietly in his socks. She didn't need a weapon. She had the house. It was August of 2003 when the house finally stopped hiding what it had become. That summer was thick with heat. The windows were always fogged. The smell of sweat and bleach hung in the walls. Ronald Woodworth was deteriorating. He was barely 110 pounds. His feet were blackened and blistered from being forced to walk barefoot across gravel, concrete, and the hot metal cover of the septic tank. The sores on his legs were open and infected. His hands, once wrapped in layers of gauze, were now just bare, cracked skin. Michelle told him, "You're disgusting. If you want sympathy, go find a church." She made him dig his own grave. He didn't know that's what it was at the time, but he was too weak to resist. He'd rest his hands on the shovel, shaking, while Michelle stood over him. When he collapsed from dehydration, Michelle dragged him aside and made him sleep on the cold bathroom tile. The next morning, Ronald didn't wake up. David checked his pulse, then looked at Michelle. She said, "Well, I guess he gave up." And that was it. No call to 911. No attempt at CPR. No sign of panic. She told David to bury him behind that shed. And he did. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He just dug. Shane knew. He had seen the bruises, the beatings. He had heard Ronald's muffled screams at night. He tried to talk to Michelle about it, quiet, carefully. He said, "I think we should call someone." He was getting worse. Michelle smiled at him like a mother would, then leaned in and whispered, "If you say one more word, I'll make you disappear too." That night, Shane started packing his things. He wrote in his notebook one final entry. "This isn't a home. This is hell. I have to get out." Michelle found it before he could leave. And this time, she didn't just threaten. She instructed David. David Knotek took a .22 rifle and walked down the hall to where Shane was sleeping. He knocked, said nothing, waited for Shane to open the door. Then he raised the gun and shot him in the back of the head. Shane dropped instantly. Michelle stood behind him. They wrapped Shane's body in a tarp, dragged it to the backyard, and set it on fire. They burned him in the same pit where they barbecued meat weeks earlier. Nikki smelled it first. Not smoke, not food, burning hair, and something worse underneath. She knew. She walked past the fire pit without saying a word, went back into the house, and sat down at the kitchen table, shaking. Michelle told the girls that Shane had run away. Just like Kathy, she said. Some people don't want to be saved. But her voice was too calm, too rehearsed. The girls knew that Shane hadn't left. They knew Ronald hadn't either. They didn't know what had happened to Kathy, but they were starting to understand. No one ever left that house. They were taken. Nikki waited 2 days, then called the police from a payphone behind a gas station. She gave them everything. The abuse, the missing people, the fire pit, the backyard, the basement. Detectives showed up that same afternoon with shovels and a warrant. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Even days later, it hung in the air. Sharp and wrong. They found charred bones, fragments in the pit, bits of scalp, teeth, fabric. They brought cadaver dogs. The dogs hit on multiple spots in the yard. They asked Michelle where Kathy was. She said, "She left. I told you. I'm tired of talking about her." They asked about Ronald. He was old, probably walked off. I tried to help him. They asked about Shane. He had problems. I think he was on drugs. But Michelle's voice never cracked. Her eyes never filled. Not once. The house was full of silence, but the dirt had been speaking for years. And now, everyone could hear it. Michelle Knotek was arrested on August 8th, 2003. The moment the cuffs clicked over her wrist, she looked down, not up. Didn't ask why. Didn't fight. She just whispered, "They're making a mistake." David was arrested 2 days later. His arrest was different. He cried. The charges were severe. Second-degree murder for the deaths of Shane Watson and Ronald Woodworth. Manslaughter in the death of Kathy Loreno. Assault, criminal mistreatment. I don't know why I can't speak today. This cold is bothering me, I think maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's the meds. Who knows? So let me start this from the top. And you guys are getting all of this. The charges were severe. Second-degree murder for the deaths of Shane Watson and Ronald Woodworth. Manslaughter in the death of Kathy Loreno. Assault, criminal mistreatment, and witness tampering. Michelle's name wasn't whispered anymore. It was printed across newspapers, on TV crawls, in stunned whispers at grocery store checkouts across the state. The house in Raymond, Washington had become infamous. But Michelle, she stayed blank. Her mugshot doesn't show fear or grief, just boredom. Like she's waiting in line at the DMV. The trial didn't happen the way people expected. Michelle didn't testify. She didn't deny the charges. She barely spoke. The prosecution was prepared for a full trial. They had Nikki's statements, David's cooperation, forensic evidence, and the notebook Shane had kept before he died. But David broke first. In court, he said, "I was scared of her. I did what she told me. I thought if I didn't, I'd lose my daughters." He admitted to beating Kathy, digging Ronald's grave, burning Shane's body. And then he looked at Michelle from the stand and cried. Michelle didn't look back. The defense painted her as mentally unwell, claimed she was raised in abuse, that she was unstable, overwhelmed, stressed. But nothing could cover the facts. 3 people entered that house and never came out. 2 daughters grew up under a regime of fear. One woman orchestrated all of it. Nikki didn't take the stand. The prosecutors wanted her to. But after everything, what she'd seen, what she'd lost, they decided to spare her. Instead, they played a short clip from one of her recorded statements. Her voice was flat, calm, but behind it, you could hear the weight. She said, "My mother was good at pretending, but she didn't love people. She used them. And when she was done with them, she made them disappear." Faced with mounting evidence and no real defense, Michelle took a plea deal. She pled guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of manslaughter, multiple accounts of assault and criminal mistreatment. In return, she avoided a full trial, avoided a jury, avoided facing Nikki directly in court. And she was sentenced to 22 years in prison? Not life, not even close. At sentencing, the judge looked Michelle straight in the eye and said, "This is not just cruelty. This is a slow, intentional destruction of human life. You hid it behind kindness, and that makes it worse." Michelle didn't blink, didn't cry, didn't say a word to the families of the victims. She was led away in shackles. No final statement, no apology. Just the soft clink of her chains against the courtroom floor. Michelle Knotek walked free on November 8th, 2022. She served just under 19 years behind bars. No headlines, no press. Just a quiet release into the same gray sky she was born under. She is not on the sex offender registry. She is not under community supervision. She is free to go where she pleases, as long as she notifies the Department of Corrections. According to court records, she lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. That's all we know. Nikki Knotek is an adult now. She rarely speaks publicly. But in the few moments she has, her voice is clear, calm, and unflinching. She once told a reporter, "My mother is a manipulator, a performer. She convinced people she was saving lives while she was taking them. I survived her. That doesn't mean I'm healed." Nikki changed her last name, moved away, built a quiet life, but the damage followed. She said she still double checks every lock, still doesn't trust sudden kindness, still wakes up some nights thinking she hears Shane calling for help from the hallway. Sammy, the younger sister, has never spoken publicly, and no one blames her. There are no graves for Kathy Loreno, Ronald Woodworth, or Shane Watson. No headstones, no memorial benches, no plaques. Just names that faded away from the news and the memory of a white farmhouse with secrets in the soil. The town of Raymond still talks about it, quietly. The house was sold. The yard was cleared. The pit was filled in. But the neighbors haven't forgotten. One said, "There's a reason no one stays long in that place. Something clings to it." Michelle never confessed, never explained, never said the names of the people she erased. She once said during intake at the correctional facility, "They came to me broken. I tried to help them. They weren't strong enough." Michelle didn't kill with knives or guns. She killed with power, with kindness twisted into cruelty, with a slow, smothering control that erased a person's will before it erased their body. She made people believe they were the problem, that they were sick, that they deserved the pain. And she did it with a smile. She turned her home into a stage and cast herself as the savior. But when the curtain fell, all that was left was ash, bone, and silence. They say home should be the safest place in the world. But in Raymond, Washington, there was a house that didn't shelter people. It devoured them. You've been listening to a production of Sidney Smith Creative, LLC, and the You Hear Good Things podcast network. All rights reserved. For more true crime stories that stay with you, follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and join the community on Patreon. What did you feel in this one? Was Michelle Knotek evil or something colder than that? Where does the responsibility land on her, on David, on the silence in that town? What does justice even mean when the people who helped her are still walking free? Go ahead and click that link and send me a DM. I would love to hear from you. You are the quiet jury, and your verdict matters. On air sources: Washington State versus Michelle Knotek plea agreement. Testimony from Nikki Knotek. Court transcripts and parole documents. The Seattle Times. The Daily Chronicle. CBS News. Department of Corrections records. Documented interviews with investigators and surviving family members. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious.